All right, everybody, welcome back to Beans No Ball. It's Super Bowl week. Obviously, the season is right at its end. We got a lot of news to talk about. A lot of obviously the NFL honors coming up this couple days from now. So just get right into it, right into the swing of things. As of course, the season is coming to an end.
Yeah, so with this episode, we're switching it up a bit since we're going to leave the episode for the Super Bowl on possibly Saturday. So that can be a whole other episode for that. While today, we will just be going over some recent NFL news and our predictions for the NFL honors on Thursday. So obviously, let's kick it right off. And probably the biggest headline of this week was Tom Brady officially announcing retirement. So the GOAT, the seven-time Super Bowl champion, is officially retiring from football. It is also announced that he could be possibly joining the booth. So that could be probably a great sign for him. At least Tom Brady's still going to be in the world of football, and even crazier, the spot where he was in Florida, getting sold on eBay for like what 900,000, which is pretty sad. The sand that he was sitting on when he made his
I
retirement
think it's
video,
90, but I
ninety
think it's
thousand.
90, but
So I
still, I
think
mean,
I think 90 is
insane,
probably the most.
insane to
Yeah,
pay for that.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a very obscure amount of money to pay for something. Maybe it was the wrong spot, but it doesn't matter. But Tom Brady, arguably the undisputed GOAT of football, officially walking away from football and from the Bucks. Obviously, just got to have a change of quarterbacks, but we'll leave that for a future episode when we talk about offseason.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, greatest of all time, 7 rings. Pretty hard to dispute that, but we could see that was coming to an end. Obviously, this season it was on the downturn, but of course, the legacy he leaves. I mean, you just wish the best for him and whatever he does moving forward. Now, of course, moving on from that, um, guess another big news in the quarterback carousel that's coming around this offseason. Got a lot of quarterbacks that are going to be moving around. Derek Carr, he's obviously, after we saw everything he said in the Pro Bowl, he himself said that he's probably out of Vegas at this point. So, one of the big leaders to land his services are the New Orleans Saints. They have already they had Breeze over, had him for a meeting. Everything kind of seems in place. Obviously, we will wait until the NFL New Year in March to once they can actually start making trades and stuff like that. But it is looking pretty eminent that Derek Carr to the Saints, a trade will be finalized once it is available.
Yeah, so me personally, I really don't like this because I don't like how the Saints are possibly on their way to move a step away from Jameis. I don't like that move. I mean, for the last season before Jameis got injured, he was doing somewhat well for the Saints and keeping them above 500. Obviously, when his injury fell, the quarterback situation was a little lumpy with Andy Dalton, Taysom Hill, and then as we know, got eliminated later in the season. But I personally, I don't like this move. If Derek Carr does sign with the Saints, he could possibly turn this franchise around after losing Breeze, since we know after Saints retired, the quarterback situation has been very lumpy, I should say. But I honestly, I'm not a fan of this. But for Derek Carr, obviously, could be a nice fresh restart for him. Now moving on to another headline that just came out of the water. Sean Payton addressing some rumors apparently that he didn't go to the Cardinals mainly because of Kyler Murray or something like that. I mean, there wasn't a clear, evident reason why it was because of Kyler Murray, let alone if it even was about Kyler Murray. But that's just some rumors going around. A couple of speculations here and there. But obviously, we already talked about it, him signing with the Broncos with Russell. Some good stuff can happen with that Broncos. I do feel Russell's gonna have a turnaround this season, but those rumors could be a little iffy, especially when it comes to Kyler Murray.
Yeah, I mean, reports do say it was kind of a pick your poison when Sean Payton was making his decision whether it was going to be the Cardinals or the Broncos. I mean, it was either Kyler Murray or obviously we see, I mean, the situation that Russell Wilson's in. You and I both, we have our takes on what Russell Wilson will be able to do next season. Obviously, I see him to possibly have a resurgence, especially with a coach like Sean Payton. But I mean, of course, for his own view, I mean, he felt he would have a better opportunity with Wilson. I honestly would think the same. I mean, I do. I mean, I love Kyler. even being in my team's division, I mean, obviously I don't want to see him succeed too much, but as a guy, he's a great quarterback. I really do think he gets a little too much hate than he really should. But I mean, regardless, that was Sean Payton's decision. So I mean, obviously he is Broncos head coach now, and we'll see what he can do with Wilson. Now, of course, moving on, you of course did allude to this just a minute ago when we talked about Brady's retirement. He has reached an agreement to get into the broadcast booth, but he will take a year off. So in 2020 for the 2024 season, he'll join Fox in the broadcast booth, which there are speculations that Gronk could be joining him. We'll see. Obviously, that would be a pretty interesting broadcast duo that we could see in the future. So pretty nice to see what could be in the future. Obviously these two great chemistry for the two. See what we could see for future games.
Yeah, I really like this. These guys were best friends in New England. Won I think three Super Bowls together with Gronk there. I believe 3 Super Bowls.
So it was
3 or 4 around there.
Yeah.
3 or 4 around there. I'm not quite too sure, but hey, I mean, having them in the booth for Fox, that could be great. 2 football. Gronk at tight end. He knows his football, and then obviously Brady, like I said, undisputed GOAT. Them just talking football in the booth. If it's just them two, it's gonna be a nice game to watch, especially with that commentary. So that could be something. But obviously Tom Brady taking a year off, like you said. I do respect his decision. Stepping away from football. Got a year to clear his mind, and then obviously step away to his new career. Now, obviously moving on, another news with my team, Tony Pollard, who was arguably had his legacy season so far, and obviously outperformed Zeke in every way. But obviously, with this injury against the 49ers, he did require surgery. And from the speculating rumors around Dallas Cowboys, it seems that Jerry Jones will be placing the franchise tag on him. And if that is the case, which is most likely the most viable one here, he will make he will make $10 million in the upcoming season. I honestly like this move a lot. He's gonna come back from an injury. Franchise tagging him is the safe route, and it's only $10 million, so it's not a lot. And other things saying that the Cowboys should draft Bijan Robinson from the Texas Longhorns for the 26th pick. Look, from what I've been watching, from Bijan Robinson lately, after the rumors have been speculating, he's a great running back. He's really good. He's like another elusive Pollard, really. But with the kids, I honestly feel like Cowboys should stop drafting running backs in the first round. We look at Zeke, he had his good 4 years, and then he just kept regressing, I wouldn't take Bijan Robinson when we have a very elusive, fast guy like Tony Pollard. Obviously with the Cowboys, Jalen Hyatt from the Texas Longhorns as well would be a great asset for us as a receiver if he's still on the board. He could probably be a competent receiver 2, 3, depending on Michael Gallup's situation. But Tony Pollard, he is the future of the Cowboys. I really hope his injury does not screw up next season, because this is exactly what happened to Michael Gallup. Phenomenal, underrated receiver in this season. Coming back from his ACL injury, he had a very bad slump. So obviously, I hope for the best for Pollard. That after his recovery stage, he gets back to training and hopefully does extremely well next season.
Yeah, I mean, you said it best right there. Just obviously we've seen how Zeke he realistically had a down year. Obviously, I mean he did pick it up near the end, but obviously Pollard did really pick up the slack. I mean, you see 1,380 yards and 12 touchdowns. Like you said, a great breakout year for him, and he probably is going to be the future of your guys' backfield. So still to see what happens with Zeke, probably restructuring the deal, taking less money, and who knows if he has a change of heart and he does end up leaving. I know for your sake, it'd probably be best if he stays. Obviously, just one of your favorite players overall. But it's a great move for Pollard, especially coming off that injury. And I'm liking this deal, and it's a pretty good move for him. Now, of course, moving forward, we got another pretty big deal in the quarterback carousel. Moving on, we got the Raiders looking like the biggest contender to land Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, he is the biggest ticket this offseason. We do obviously have a good decent amount of teams really vying for him, but realistically, it's looking like either the Jets or the Raiders that could pry him away from the Packers. Honestly, I mean the Jets do have a good amount of capital that they could be offering to the Packers, but when you see the Raiders situation, them having Devontae is a really big factor that really gonna make Rodgers probably want to join them. I mean, you know how I talked. I mean, you of course always had your deal with the Raiders. You don't like them. I mean, I don't like them either. But of course, we always say our stuff. But I was always really adamant about the Raiders are not as bad of a team that they have been looking. I mean, they could realistically be a playoff team next season, especially if Aaron Rodgers joins. So you add him onto this team, that's probably his best chance to have success moving forward. And I honestly would expect this deal to be made, March, April.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, he could possibly reunite with Devontae Adams. I'm a fan of this, honestly, to be honest. There's so many speculations with Twitter. Aaron Rodgers saying, "Where should I buy my house?" And obviously Devontae Adams retweeting saying, "Near me," or some stuff like that. I gotta go back on Twitter to look at that. But obviously, we have our hatred for the Raiders, and we've said it before in the season how the Raiders, they look better on paper, but realistically, Josh McDaniels really took a toll on that Raider team. Pretty much changed them to look bad, and obviously we saw. I mean, Josh McDaniels, excuse me. We saw that happen, so obviously, hopefully, depending with the Derek Carr, either a trade can happen or just signing a free agency. Now, moving on to some other big news, Stephen Wilkes from the Carolina Panthers signed with the 49ers for their new defensive coordinator position. So obviously, as D'Amico Ryan did leave, as he is now the head coach of the Houston Texans, I would say this is a very solid pickup. This is a solid pickup for the Niners. We saw how Carolina's defense, we saw how slumpy it was, but it kind of did make some progress earlier in this later on in the season. Obviously when you got like a guy like J.C. Horn there, who had possibly an underrated season this year, and obviously with the Niners, D'Amico Ryan, he really changed that defense around. I feel like Stephen Wilkes, with the players he has and the way he can build around those players, I do think the Niners defense will still be a top contender next season.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, anyone that's been joining this Niners defense has really had a lot of success. You see Robert Saleh now, D'Amico Ryans. It's a really favorable job, especially when you got guys like Fred Warner and Nick Bosa, just everyone, even Tyler Hufanga, who just randomly popped up and had an insane breakout year. Obviously, a USC guy. Hate to see it as a Rams fan, but it's nice to see for a Trojan. But I do like this hire. I mean, I said this before. I really do think Wilkes should have gotten the permanent job in Carolina. I mean, now the Niners get a really good hire here. Obviously, he didn't have a lot of success as a head coach back in his time with the Cardinals, but now, I mean, you see he is a great coordinator, and obviously this is going to be a pretty big issue with me. Hopefully he doesn't have as much success as it's looking possible for him, but we'll see how good this hire could be for the Niners moving forward. Unfortunately for me, I really do think this is going to be a good move. Of course, moving on, we got another pretty big hire in the defensive coordinator role. We got the Minnesota Vikings picking up a new DC, and Brian Flores. Obviously, we know a lot about him, a lot about his situation. Former Miami Dolphins head coach, had that whole situation last offseason when he was fired after all the tampering allegations he made against Dolphins owner Stephen Ross, and kind of being blackballed away from the league. But now, I mean, he kind of got back on his feet as a defensive assistant with the Steelers, and that landed him another defensive coordinator role here in Minnesota. I really like this hire, honestly. We know how great Brian Flores is. We saw him in his time with New England. That's why he got the Miami job, and why he's been so successful. His defensive schemes are just really great, and with a team like Minnesota, who their biggest downfall was their defense originally. I mean, sure, their offense proved to be fraudulent come playoff time, but with a really weak defense that really exploited it even more. And I really love the hire of Brian Flores to really bolster that defense. I would have really liked to see the Rams part ways with Raheem Morris and pick up Flores ourselves. But hey, the Vikings got a great hire, and I honestly think this is going to do wonders for their defense.
Yeah, I'm also excuse me. Yeah, I'm also a fan of this move. Brian Flores, great defensive coordinator, especially this time in New England, and obviously with the controversy with Miami. Don't get me wrong, he was a pretty okay head coach for the Dolphins, but obviously with the controversy, the players, and yeah, obviously his first time. I would obviously let that slide, but I do think he is, and arguably objectively, he is better as a defensive coordinator. And obviously how we talked about that Vikings defense is very atrocious, let alone them winning and being 11-0 in one-score games in the regular season. So picking up Brian Flores, I do think it will be a big step up for the defense for the Minnesota Vikings in 2023. Now moving on to another pretty great headline that happened about pretty, I would say, legendary player. The living fossil AJ Green had finally announced retirement this week. This is pretty sad to see. I mean, AJ Green was arguably a top 10 receiver in like the early 2010s. Obviously you had guys like AJ Green, DeAndre Hopkins, Des Bryant, Megatron, even throwing Jarvis Landry, Antonio Brown, Julio Jones, T.Y. Hilton. Those guys. I would say they made my childhood as a football fan, and AJ Green was obviously one of those players. With his time with Cincinnati, he had great seasons. Never really got that playoff experience. He's another very underrated player. To never win a ring. I mean, you got other guys obviously, but AJ Green just one of those guys. With him having Andy Dalton at quarterback, having their good years there in Cincinnati, and obviously coming with the Cardinals to see what they could done, and he just really couldn't get anything going. He had nothing left in the tank, and obviously he does end his career with a 77-yard touchdown against the 49ers. So at least he did go out. Somewhat well. But I don't think AJ Green just not enough to be a Hall of Famer. It saddens me. Don't get me wrong, but he just he's missing a few major components. Megatron was able to get in, but we saw how Megatron was in his prime. Sadly for AJ Green, he just came up. I do think he is very short, but I would still think he will go down as one of the legendary players ever.
Honestly, me personally, hey, I love AJ Green as a receiver. He was on one of my favorite receivers when I originally started getting into football. Obviously, those years where Marvin Lewis would take the Bengals into the playoffs every year, they would go out first round, of course, but always seeing them, he was a great guy to watch. But to me, legendary would be a stretch just in my own eyes. He was great, of course, but like you said, guys like Megatron and Julio Jones, of course, those are the guys you think of when you think elite. And unfortunately, maybe it could have been better if Green had a better quarterback throwing to him. Sure, don't get me wrong, Andy Dalton was great in his time in Cincinnati, and in his prime in Cincinnati, of course, but he probably isn't enough to get legendary status, and of course, way short of the Hall of Fame, unfortunately. Would have been nice to see what he could have done in a better offense, but regardless, he made a lot of memories for us, made a lot of memories for everyone in the football world, and obviously wish him the best in his retirement. And of course, I got to see live in person one of his final great games, obviously on the Cardinals, when he just a living fossil of himself, cooking my really poor Rams defense. So obviously, like I said, best of luck to him in retirement. And moving on, we'll hit one more little news point. We got obviously someone you're pretty familiar with, Christian, Mike Gesicki. Your starting tight end this whole year in fantasy. Obviously, we knew your takes on him, but it's looking more and more likely that Gesicki will be moving on from the Dolphins, as he really wasn't a good fit in McDaniel's offense. You yourself know this well. He really wasn't getting touches, consistently putting up 1.2 points, even no points, not really getting any traction in that offense. When you got guys like Tyreek, Waddle, it was kind of hard to really get him involved. Just his play style wasn't really working. Regardless, good for him. He is arguably one of the best tight ends in the league. Sure, you got guys like Kittle and Kelsey and arguably Mark Andrews, really running that position. But Gesicki is quietly a really good tight end, and you can just really see it's he'll easily be a great asset to any winning team in this league and really help them make a playoff push in the near future.
Yeah, Mike Gesicki, he's been underrated since he came into the NFL. I've always been saying this, regardless of how, he was a letdown in fantasy. I do think he's a very underrated receiver. I like you said right now, I just don't feel he fits in with the offensive scheme that Mike McDaniels has. Surely, I do think we'll probably succeed in another offense, but obviously, it looks like with this time with the Miami Dolphins is probably coming to an end. So I do wish hope for Mike Gesicki. Hopefully, he gets on a team that is not necessarily tight end heavy, but is used a lot. I wouldn't say Cowboys, but we're pretty loaded on tight ends, so that's out of the picture. But I do think Mike Gesicki could have a possibility of succeeding with the Steelers. With how they run their scheme sometimes. But
Depends what they do with Farmouth.
Yeah, with Firemouth, him too. Him and Gesicki and Firemouth could be a nice tight end duo. Who knows? But obviously, there'll be time will tell. All right, and that's going to wrap up this week's news with the major headlines from the past week. And now we will be moving on to our predictions for the NFL honors winners to wrap up the episode. So obviously, let's move right along. And let's start off with the MVP position. Now, obviously, we got some great candidates for the MVP position, but two main headrunners up is Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts. Obviously, both phenomenal players. You see how great Mahomes has been. Could arguably be the next GOAT. But he still has a lot. He still has a lot of time to prove. And obviously, you got a guy like Jalen Hurts who got some players built around him. Harry Roseman finally getting assets for him, and look at the phenomenal season he's been playing. But I will be doing the thing that Patrick Mahomes will win the MVP. Just looking at his stats and everything that he's been producing, and obviously him coming back to the Super Bowl, and his 5-time as a starter. His 50 years as a starter and coming back to the Super Bowl once again. So I do think Patrick Mahomes, with how his legacy is right now, will be winning MVP.
Yeah, I mean that's basically what I'm gonna have to say myself too. I mean, just another great season for Mahomes. I mean, it's kind of this kind of stuff we get used to nowadays, but for almost anyone else, this is just incredible numbers, incredible everything for him. Arguably, you could say Joe Burrow kind of overtook Jalen Hurts after his time away with injury, but that's the thing, it was just the injury that really was holding Hurts back. Who knows what he could have done if he didn't get hurt, but it was really a two-man race at this point, and arguably I think Mahomes really just runs away with this, especially with everyone writing the Chiefs off and him still just really taking them on his back and really leading that offense like he does. I mean, back in the Super Bowl, third time in 4 years. I mean, well, what else can you say about this? So just easily, I'll go with that for him, for Mahomes, for my MVP, and for Offensive Player of the Year. Now, I mean, got 4 great candidates. Obviously, a couple of these were also MVP candidates, but I'm gonna have to say Justin Jefferson. It's just a historic receiving year. I mean, just say all you want. 17 games compared to 16. What they would say with Calvin Johnson. This mirrors what Cooper Kupp was doing last year. I mean, obviously, I know good and well. Just a historic year by him. Easily a historic year by Justin Jefferson here. So, pretty easy for me to make this call. If this award wasn't if the MVP award wasn't so quarterback friendly, I'd honestly be inclined to call him the MVP. But him being a receiver, he'll have to settle for Offensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, just how we mentioned MVP, he is another candidate for the MVP position. With the MVP award, but we know how it is. Usually quarterbacks always win that. So, but yes, Justin Jefferson, he is undoubtedly. I do feel he's going to be the unanimous Offensive Player of the Year with how many records, with the records he broke this season with the Vikings. Sadly, they couldn't make a deep playoff run with how fraudulent the Vikings were. But Jay Jettis, he is the future of the Vikings unless, contract negotiations don't go well. But without a doubt, he will be the Offensive Player of the Year. Now, Defensive Player of the Year, it's up to really 3 main guys. Nick Bosa, Michael Parsons, and Chris Jones. Hassan Riddick was snubbed from this. But on my unbiased opinion, I do think it would be Nick Bosa, just because of the fact that he was able to, have a better season. Not bad season, yeah, better season, mostly stat wise than Chris Jones and Micah Parsons. After missing 6 games, and while missing 6 games, he did manage to put on a monster show for the rest of the season. But obviously, come playoffs, he was a little wonky, a little stuff here and there, especially in the Cowboys game and Eagles game. But as much as it hurts me, I would love to see if Micah does win Defensive Player of the Year. But I know how much backlash that would happen. But regardless of that, unbiased opinion, I do think it would be Nick Bosa.
Yeah, I mean, without a doubt, I think he's the runaway winner here. I mean, everything you said, you summed it up perfectly. Just the time he missed and still being able to put up these numbers, it's really commendable. I mean, he's easily gonna win this award. I mean, can't really give it to no one else. I mean, sure, without a doubt, Michael Parsons had a great year, and even Chris Jones. I mean, like you just said, I mean, I was gonna make this point too. Hassan Reddick, to me, easily had a better year than Jones, and should have been in the running for this award, at least to be the third candidate, because easily it was between Parsons and Bosa. Bosa easily running away with it, but I really think Hassan Reddick was more deserving than Chris Jones. But without a doubt, Bosa is going to be my Defensive Player of the Year. Then obviously we can easily move on from that to now, of course, let's talk about the rookies and Offensive Rookie of the Year. This award is a little more up in the air. We got, I mean, surprisingly, Brock Purdy was thrown into the nomination. I mean, I really don't think he did enough to earn that nomination. I mean, sure, he had a phenomenal little 6-game run in the regular season, but regardless, the top two are Kenneth Walker and Garrett Wilson. And objectively, I'm gonna have to go with Walker. I mean, to really say who had more of an impact on their team, I really think Kenneth Walker. I mean, his insane run games throughout really pushed the Seahawks to really get into that playoff spot, especially when Geno was kind of starting to fall off little by little throughout the season. I mean, sure, he picked it up near the end, but Kenneth Walker was just instrumental to the Seahawks' success. I mean, sure, Garrett Wilson was phenomenal for the Jets, but you do see, I mean, how that great defense was helping them out. And of course, Reese Young, when he was before he got hurt, of course, and that was what derailed this season. But I'm gonna have to say Kenneth Walker was the more valuable piece, and for that matter, I'm gonna go with him as my Offensive Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, I love Kenneth Walker, but I think we're gonna disagree on this time. But I do think for my sleeper pick, I will be going Chris Olave. I mean, just looking at Chris Olave, he had a very underrated season, getting 1,000 total yards with the Saints, especially with that quarterback situation, and making a run. I mean, Chris Olave, I mean, he hasn't got talked about at all last season. I mean, he's getting overshadowed by Garrett Wilson at the receiver position. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Garrett Wilson, but like you said, his injury and that defense helping him out a bit, a little slump here and there. Don't get me wrong, he did have a quarterback situation with Zach Wilson and Mike White here and there. But I mean, looking at the Saints, you had Andy Dalton and Taysom Hill. Andy Dalton put on some master classes, and then he put on some disaster classes. And the fact that Chris Olave was still managed to at least get 1,000 total yards, I mean, I do think that deserves, some talks from probably the front runner here. And he did have a better season than Garrett Wilson objectively. So I do think Chris Olave would possibly be the sleeper pick for Offensive Rookie of the Year.
Well, I mean, sure, for a sleeper, but obviously with these being the finalists, got to go with one of these. So your prediction there?
Yeah. Now moving on with the Defensive Rookie of the Year. This one is not really up in the air, but some controversy could stir. We got the two front runners, Sauce Gardner and Tariq Woolen. Obviously, Aiden Hutchinson is up there, but he hasn't really. Don't get me. He had a great season for his rookie. He was a great rookie season, but it wasn't a phenomenal one as these two. Obviously, we see Sauce Gardner. He's the future for the Jets. He's the future quarterback for the Jets, possibly leading that defense. But we saw obviously something that he's PI merchant, this and that, PI machine here. I mean, he has some good coverage grades. Don't get me wrong, he's great in coverage. He gets a lot of PBUs here and there. So personally, I do think he will win it. But objectively, I do think it will be it should go to Tariq Woolen, just because I do think he had a slightly better season than him, and he had a very more consistent game. But obviously, Tariq Woolen, the playoffs kind of did show here and there. But objectively, it's going to be Sauce. But realistically, I would think it would be Tariq. But I will still be going with Sauce as the winner.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Sauce too. I mean, I really do think he is more deserving of it myself. I mean, sure, Tariq Woolen had a phenomenal year. I believe it was like 6 interceptions, something like that. I mean, great numbers for him, especially as a rookie. But you just see overall not just interceptions, but just Sauce's coverage, just everything overall in his game this year as a rookie. I mean, to me, he was the most instrumental part of this Jets defense that obviously was carrying for the most part until they slowly started falling apart. But regardless, to me, Sauce Gardner is the most deserving rookie here, and I'm gonna have to go with him as my defensive rookie as well. And for comeback player of the year, of course, we got 3 really deserving guys, but I think it's pretty clear who gets this one. Without a doubt, I'm gonna have to go with Geno Smith. I mean, sure, Saquon and McCaffrey, obviously, after you see them coming back from injuries and all that, great years, no doubt. But you see Geno Smith, obviously he was completely written off. His famous quote, of course, they wrote him off, he didn't write back. Just a phenomenal year for him. Just no one expected him to get the job, especially. I mean, he finally does get some recognition, gets put above Drew Lock after the Wilson trade, and he's just phenomenal to will the Seahawks in the playoffs. I mean, sure, you could say what you want. I mean, of course, I will say that last that game that did get them into the playoffs, a bit fluky with that touch and go game against my Rams. Refs did help him a little bit, kept the Lions out of the playoffs. Whatever, still a phenomenal year for Geno Smith, and even as one of the biggest Seahawk haters myself, I do have to give my props to him. A great year and the most deserving for comeback player of the year.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you once again. Obviously, people are going to be upset about this, but I mean, look at Geno in his career. He spent his whole time as a backup, struggling as a starter with the Jets. He had some time with the San Diego Chargers, if I'm being realistic here. But, he spent some time with the Chargers, released. And Geno Smith, this whole time as a backup, he was never a really good quarterback. And obviously, with the trade to the Seahawks, when they named him the starter in August, nobody had faith. Everyone was putting the Seahawks playoff hopes down the drain. And then obviously opening up week 1 against the Broncos, he wins against Russell Wilson, which made that happen. And obviously, like you said, his famous quote, they wrote me off, but I didn't write back. Honestly, it's a hard quote, really. Geno Smith leading the Seahawks team, which was pretty unexpected. No one really thought it would happen. Obviously, he had some, pretty bad games here and there, but we're looking at that. He did lead the Seahawks at some point. They were 7-5, and in the race for the NFC West. But obviously, how that turned out. And he just arguably, this is not even arguably, this is the best season he's ever had, objectively. And I think that's one thing people can actually agree on, especially this time as a backup. And with that said, I do think he will win the comeback player of the year. Now, obviously, that does wrap up the awards for the NFL honors. So we will be going. Coach.
Want to go? Yeah.
Excuse me. Forgot about Coach of the Year. David, there you go. Go for it.
Well, I'll start it off then. But obviously, when we see these 5 these 5 coaches that were put up, easily, I would say it comes down to 2. To me, it's going to have to come down to Kyle Shanahan and Brian Daboll. Obviously, I mean, Sean McDermott, really don't know what he's doing on this list. But sure, Doug Peterson, obviously willing the Jaguars to a playoff spot, really commendable. Obviously deserving of a finalist spot. Nick Sirianni, they're obviously one seed, really rebuilt the culture in Philly. Obviously got them to the Super Bowl. Feel like that's more the roster that he was given instead of his coaching job, but still a phenomenal job to get the culture there. But to me, it comes down to Brian Daboll willing this really bottom feeder Giants team, and Kyle Shanahan with, I mean, you see him. I mean, ends up with a 3rd string quarterback and still ends up with the 2 seed in the NFC. I mean, two great candidates, but to me, it's going to have to be Brian Dable. I mean, you see how he just completely changed that team around in 1 year. It was just, I mean, what more can you say? It was just a great job from him. I mean, we all remember that little controversy with once he got the job that with Brian Flores and Brian Dable and the leak text with Bill Belichick. All that behind us, it was just a great hire for the Giants and easily the most valuable coach this season.
Yeah, I do think same thing here. I do think Brian Dable will be winning Coach of the Year. I mean, looking back at the Giants, they had a huge playoff jump since the infamous bowl picture in, I believe, 2017. That's that. I mean, they had no success. Brian Dable, he had the Giants at what 6-1 at some point in the season. Some slump happened,
6-2.
and
Yeah.
6-2. Yeah. Then they had a very bad slump, and they still managed to get in the playoffs, beating the fraudulent Minnesota Vikings. Sadly, they didn't have a chance against Philly. I stuck by that. I don't know why people thought they had a chance. I know you were one of them, but that was gonna come into there, but that's irrelevant. But arguably, I do think it's gonna be Ryan Dable, without a doubt. I mean, sure, you can look at Sirianni too, leading the Eagles, but I mean, looking at the players they got, this and that, I do think that have kind of helped them a bit. Sean McDermott, I mean, great coach, but I mean, I don't think he belongs in here. Even with Kyle Shanahan, with his Niners, with the conference championships, and this and that, with the great teams around him. But regardless, with the past lack of success that the Giants had, and Brian Daboll stepping in and changing this team, I do think he's going to be the walkaway candidate for Coach of the Year. And now with that being said, this is officially going to wrap up our predictions for the NFL honors. Obviously, we kept this episode somewhat lengthy after our game predictions done. Then we were going to talk about the Pro Bowl today, just because for what. So that's going to wrap up this episode 24 of the Bees No Ball podcast. We should have a mini episode, not mini, actually, we'll have a pretty decent episode on Saturday morning, fully going over the Super Bowl. So you got that there, and obviously that's going to wrap up this episode. We'd like to thank all you guys for tuning in and watching us. Have some atrocious, horrible takes on what we think will happen in the next coming games that we've had all season, especially the Super Bowl. So we'd like to thank you all. And David, any final thoughts?
And of course, just obviously want to extend our gratitude to any viewers we have, any loyal fans, of course. And of course, like you said, we're gonna have our own in-depth preview to the Super Bowl. Give all our takes, our own analysis into both teams, and of course, give our predictions, in-depth predictions, of course. And yeah, all that being said, thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you guys for the Super Bowl preview.